Welcome everyone to the Sacred Hockey Mask. I am Peter, and joining me, as always,
is Lady Sasha coming to you here from sunny Orlando, Florida.
So confident. You had like 2 seconds of the confidence.
I had to think about it because it technically isn't sunny right now. I think I think it's gonna rain today. That's what made me pause. I was like, technically it's not sunny, but it usually is 99.9% of the time.
Welcome it. Embrace it. You're not used to rain. Just let the rain come in. Enjoy it. Wash yourself of the Floridian sins. Floridian, is that a word?
Yes, Floridian. That's what the natives here are called, Floridians. Yeah.
It sounds.
Or if you're not from Florida, that sometimes they're called Floridians.
It sounds like a chemical you'd put in a swimming pool. I mean, I'm not saying it sounds like chlorine, but it sounds like something you'd put in, like fluoride, I guess. Sounds like Yeah, anyway, this is a horror movie podcast. We get together. We've watched a horror movie. We're going to talk about it. Contemporary horror films. And we're doing a pretty new release this week. We're looking at Till Death, which is a Megan Fox movie that just came out the last month or so. And the premise is simple. It is about a married woman, played by Megan Fox, whose husband commits suicide right after he handcuffs himself to her at a secluded lake house in the middle of the winter. And she has no supplies, there's nothing there to help her. She's just handcuffed to a dead body that was her husband. There's obviously more to it than that. I'm keeping this spoiler free because we will start spoiler free, of course, like we always do, and we'll give you a warning somewhere in the middle before we go into spoilers. But that is the basic gist of it. So this is a simple gimmick movie to me, where you can just sum up the premise in a really simple way, which is a woman's handcuffed to her dead husband who did this intentionally to her, and she's out on her own in a middle of nowhere house, no supplies, no tools. How is she going to figure this out? It's a survival movie. A lot of potential in the premise. I'd heard fairly. Had you heard anything about this before we watched it?
Only maybe a day or two before you mentioned it to me, I saw the poster for it on Twitter, and I chose not to watch the trailer, so I went in completely blind. I just went based off of the poster.
Yeah, I also went in pretty blind. I knew the handcuff part. I knew that part of the premise, just because there's the most simplest of things that were getting shared around. But I was the same. I'd seen the poster with the her lying on the ice with the handcuff sort of chain, because it's not like a short handcuff chain. It's a bit longer. It's like a foot of chain on the handcuff to the husband's wrist. She's lying on the ice. So yeah, it's an eye-catching poster. It's got a distinct kind of simplistic look to it, but it isn't just floating heads, which I appreciate because so many posters just do that now. So I don't know what to expect from this going into it. Obviously, it went straight to VOD, which doesn't mean that much anymore, and it certainly doesn't mean much when we're still in the pandemic either. So who's to say if this would have been a theater movie? But yeah, I guess before we go any further, I'll just ask the simple question: how did you generally feel about Till Death?
I liked it more than I expected to, because one thing about me, I am not a fan of bottle films. And this
what?
Yes, the whole just a few characters in a house. I can name probably 3 bottle films that I really like. Evil Dead, that's a bottle film. Psycho, I would say Psycho is a bottle film. I enjoy that. I'm iffy whether I want to call Saw a bottle film, because most of it takes place in that bathroom, but there were scenes outside of that bathroom.
This flashback, I would kind of count it. I mean, flashbacks are a bit of a technicality, but I would say that's more of a bottle movie than Psycho. I feel like Psycho's got a lot more traveling in it. But
and Cube, I enjoyed Cube, and that kind
Cube,
of,
yeah, Cube's
even though
movie.
it's technically different locations, or is it not? I haven't figured out if they're just going into dimensions of the same cube, or what's happening, because I didn't watch all of the sequels, so maybe it gets explained later on. But
I mean, it just technically go to different rooms, but if you were in a mansion, you still call it a bottle movie. Just even if they could go to different rooms. So I mean, I'd still count that. Cube's totally a bottle movie. I reacted strongly because I have often said, long-time male Fuzz movies and TV fans will attest to my love of the bottle. Not that all bottle movies are good. Some of them aren't, right? The pinnacle, the creme de la creme, the one that you point to say this is how you do a bottle movie, of course, is 12 Angry Men. Not a horror movie, of course, but that is the pinnacle of the Bottle movie, which is just 12 men in a room debating on someone's innocence. It is very good, and that's why I like the good ones, because the good ones tend to force the writing to like be that good, because it has to do it alone on the conversation. It has to work alone on its confined premise. But yes,
Now that you say that, I think that I could say the same thing. The way you described 12 Angry Men reminded me of The Breakfast Club, which also works on the strength
yeah,
of the conversation.
that's also a Bottle movie for sure. So yes, so my shock aside of that statement. So continue with your thoughts on Until Death.
Oh, so I was happy to see Megan Fox acting again, because I know she's been through some issues in Hollywood, especially when it comes to being typecast and not given certain opportunities, because they take her look and try to put her in a box. And I think she's capable of a lot more than what she's been given in the past. So I think she did an excellent job with this. The story, without spoiling it, unless you've read this book, this would be, I guess, a spoiler if you've read the book. But
Oh, is it based in the book? I didn't know that.
no. There's a book called Gerald's Game. It's a Stephen King novel.
Okay, yes, I know. I've reviewed the movie with Tim. Yeah.
Yeah, and this reminded me a bit of Gerald's Game, except for the circumstances surrounding her husband's death. And also that in Gerald's Game, the wife is handcuffed to a bed, and her dead husband is not handcuffed to her, but he's in the room with her. Yeah. Also in a secluded cabin.
Yeah, my main thought of that story too. I mean, it plays out very differently because.
Oh yes,
yeah. Know, here she can still move. Obviously there's a big obstacle in that she's trying to drag around this body, but Gerald's Game, because Gerald's Game goes the other route. Gerald's Game is more about the flashbacks and the hallucinations and all that side of stuff, whereas this is mostly practical. It's mostly her trying to like find tools, find things that can help her and stuff. But yeah, I would agree with the sentiment you gave there, though, which is you liked it better than you thought you would. I think I agree with that. If anything, like I went on a bit of a roller coaster because I wasn't really thinking much going into it, and I thought the opening was oddly kind of strong, where the music and the cinematography I thought drew me into it in a way where I'm like, you know what, this feels like a movie. I'm kind of feeling this a little bit. If anything, I would say that it loses a little bit of the cinematic mystique that it has the more it goes on. And I know that it obviously has to reveal things, but there's some characters later on in the film that I thought were not as interesting as I think the movie probably wanted them to be. And I'll just leave it there until we get to spoilers. But
yeah, if I were to split this into, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but so I'd sort of say that overall, though, I still kind of enjoyed everything it was doing to a point. Although it kind of went from feeling like it might be a really great gem to being, okay, you know what, overall that was a solid watch. I'd recommend someone watch it, especially as a sort of like afternoon kind of like, yeah, not going to blow your mind, you know, or anything like that, but solid enough, entertaining, and yeah. So what you gonna say? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had finished a thought and I started speaking ahead of time, but I was just saying that if I were to break this into thirds, the first act of the movie, very strong. The middle act is where it kind of gets a little bit less. I was less enthusiastic about that. And then the final act, it picks back up and it's more entertaining again. So if I were to describe to somebody watching this, I would say you're going to want to, or you might want to abandon the movie towards the middle, but stick it out. It gets better again.
It does have an interesting structure. And I mean, obviously most movies can be split into 3 acts, but this is a very interesting, like, 3 acts, as it were, just because of how different they kind of are, especially the first one compared to the rest of them. I would say that I don't know if I completely agree in the ranking of the parts, if you will, based on what you just said, because I would say that I might agree the first one's the strongest, but I actually think the middle one I might prefer that more to the last chunk. Just purely because it presented more of a challenge because of how pared back it was. I don't want to spoil anything. I'm really trying not to give away where it goes once we're sort of in the situation. But the middle chunk is a lot of like the problem solving, the discovery of what's going on, and that kind of stuff. But I will say that even when I think it's at its weakest, I was still kind of having fun. It just kind of like went down to just being a fun movie at that point, as opposed to feeling like it might be something special, which it kind of felt like it might be early on. Like early on, I thought, oh, it might actually, like I might be really enthusiastic about this, and I am still enthusiastic. I'm more enthusiastic than I thought I'd be, but I'm not like, oh man, this is like the new gem that everyone has to see. Like you have to, like, it's not that, but it's a fun movie that I think is, and there's a lot. Trust me. I am actually shocked, and some people would say Conjuring 3 was as bad as what I'm about to say, but we've not really hit any stinkers yet. 3 episodes in, and honestly, that's not going to last. We're going to we're going to hit some stinkers. It's definitely happening, but it's not happened yet. So fair play. Yeah, Megan Fox. You mentioned Megan Fox there. She is. She's okay in the movie, I think. I think there's at times where I almost don't think she was acting as traumatized as she should have been, given the ridiculous like circumstances she's been put in. There's a few times where I felt like she was maybe being a little bit too reserved, but it is nice to see her just on the principle of the real life stuff, which is she was effectively blackballed because she spoke out against Michael Bay, or said, I can't even remember the exact statements or what the scenario was, but she did kind of disappear from mainstream cinema for a while after that, because that was back in like 2009, 2010, kind of around then, and then she was gone for a long time. And hell, maybe that's even why, because in this movie the couple have been married for 11 years, which would take you back to 2010. I wonder if that's even intentional. This is almost meant to be kind of like a metaphor for the baggage she's been going around Hollywood with for the last decade.
Well, I don't know if they have the same expression in the UK, but in America, sometimes people call their significant other their ball and chain.
Oh, yeah.
So, so her husband effectively became a literal ball and chain. She's...
Honestly, my only complaint with that is that at one point she actually said that out loud, and I thought, no, we got the metaphor. You didn't have to spell it out to us. Because there's a point where she gets mad and says, I was carrying around your dead carcass years before now. You just didn't know it. And I'm like, no, you made it too. You spelled it out. Now it's not smart anymore. Now it's like, we're proud of our metaphor and we're going to tell you about it. Like, no. Let it stand. Let it stand on its own. But I mean, that's not a huge complaint in the grand scheme of things, but it did annoy me a little bit. But no, it's got some tremendous mood early on, I would say, because it doesn't just jump into being a horror movie. Like it spends some time just sort of letting who this woman is, what her relationships are, because I think it's a spoiler to say she's having an affair with someone at the start of the movie. I think that's that's right at the start. It just sets up that she's unhappy in this marriage, and of course you're thinking, does he know? Does the husband know? Does what's going on here? It does kind of feel like there's some sort of ulterior motive. If anything, if I have an acting complaint, is that maybe the husband is a bit too, he's that evil British pompous kind of like feel to him the entire time. He's a little bit caricature to a point.
I kind of liked how that played out. It reminded me of this is an old Julia Roberts movie from the 80s, but it's called Sleeping with the Enemy. And it was also about a woman who was trying to get away from her abusive husband. And in that movie, things were very subtle. The same way this gentleman, it's like little subtle things. There's like an underlying uneasiness to him as they're, introducing his character. And you just feel like, what's going to set him off? He just always seems very calm and very deliberate, but he gives an air of, I can go off and fly off the handle at any moment. But he doesn't. And it just keeps you on edge. I also like the contrast that they showed when the movie opens. I thought the first gentleman that was with her was her husband, because the way they interacted with each other, and they were so warm and loving with each other, and it was a completely different feel to when you see her actual husband, and it's a complete opposite. It's a polar opposite. It's funny that she used the term polar, because there's a coldness between them that is palpable. I thought that,
and then the rest of the movie
well.
Takes place in the snow as well, just to add on to your pun there. No, I agree. It's that thing where the whole point of that is to show you just how fractured her marriage is, because once you do get her with her husband, and they just seem so unhappy with each other, like they're not emoting at all, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, all right. So we're getting this sense of just how, it's that thing where it becomes clear by the end of the scene with the was it Mark? I think the guy she's no, was Mark the husband? I can't remember. I can't remember. Mark's the husband. Sorry. Tom is the boyfriend or the
Mm-hmm.
whatever you'd like to call him. But he and her, is she's kind of standoffish about the relationship in this scene. And I think by the end of the relationship, obviously she eventually says, "Oh, it's my anniversary tomorrow. I can't see you." But I think before that, you kind of start to get the feeling like there's a reason why she's conflicted. There's a reason why she's trying to put a stop to this and say that we can't do this anymore. And the second you see her with her husband, you get that feeling that like are they not like even noticing when each other are at home because she goes to see him at his office? Like, was he not there that morning to speak to? Just little details like that. And he's some big hotshot lawyer. He's at a big law firm and he's got like this private office and all the rest of it. Everything about it is cool. Even the fact that she has to go to his workplace to meet him and talk to him feels very impersonal, right? It feels very, oh, you made an appointment with my secretary. You may come and see me now. And not that that's literally what's happening. It's not like she had to do that, but it just gives it that feeling that she went to his workplace to do that. Adds that little layer to it, which is I will give it credit though, because the opening of this movie, which is a woman is cheating on her husband and feels conflicted about it, and then she's going to have to speak to her husband the next day. This could be painfully dull because so many stories in movies and TV are about cheating spouses, and oh boy, are 999 out of 1,000 times is it boring as shit and cliched and everything else. I thought this movie was working overtime. The director was working overtime to make it a little bit interesting. The way it was like intercutting between her driving home and the conversation. The score I thought was doing its best to make it, and it was basically a case of the actual story so far is not necessarily that interesting, but the filmmaking's making it feel interesting. The filmmaking's giving it a bit of a feel and a bit of a vibe, and as a result, you're kind of you're drawn in a little bit. You're giving it a little bit of a leeway, and you're letting it kind of play out until it starts to show its hand a little bit more, I guess.
Yeah, I found her husband to almost be as creepy as, if not more creepy than, the abusive husband in the new Invisible Man. Like he was actually less creepy because you could almost predict the type of things he would do. But this guy, because he was so unpredictable, you didn't know what he was going to do. Just them going out to dinner for their anniversary I never felt like my stomach tensed up when he went to put her necklace on. Like something as simple as he's going to put a necklace on her. I felt tense. Like, is he going to do something? What's going to happen? Because there was just something off about him.
There is a tension in that scene, and nothing bad's going to happen because they're in a public place, kind of thing. Although it's interesting you compare it to the boyfriend in Invisible Man, because now you've mentioned that let's just say you were getting 5 guys for a police lineup, and they always try to get guys who look similar. They would be on the same police lineup.
Oh yeah,
they look very similar. But yeah, like him putting on that fancy new necklace, it does it's almost framed and shot as if he's about to strangle her. Like if this was a movie where someone had like a piano wire and they were going to garrote them with it, like that's and don't get me wrong, it's a little heavy-handed. There's another couple there. This young woman like is proposed to at the restaurant, and there's moments like that where it's a little bit heavy-handed, and you can kind of see. And she runs into the woman in the bathroom and tries to give her some advice, and it feels a little bit like, okay, we get the point. So it's not perfect. Like I don't want to make it sound like it's like a, some genius film that's full of subtleties necessarily, but it's doing just enough with all of its ideas that it feels like a movie, and it feels like it's not. It feels like it's always setting something up, which, well, even if it is a little heavy-handed at times. There's been so many VOD movies that feel the opposite, where it feels like they're not setting anything up, where it feels like there's nothing to say. At least if it's been a little heavy-handed, at least there's a story. At least there's something going on. So
I agree. There's some character development going on. They tried hard to get in there. There's a lot, like you said, with a lot of recent VODs. I've watched so many movies in this past year where there's like almost no character development. It's like, this is Bob, this is Jen, they're getting haunted. It's like we don't even know who they are yet. It's 2 minutes into the movie.
Nah, it is a big problem, and I think this has setup and payoff, and the setup and payoffs aren't necessarily neat. I won't say much, but I'll just say she sees a photo early on, which kind of starts like a plot thread, which is always going to come back up later. And it's not the neatest thing ever. It's a little bit kind of, again, obvious and heavy-handed, but it's like at least it is setting something up. It's setting something up that can pay off later. And I think if you go into this with the right expectations of, I want to watch a decent B movie, which does kind of like present itself, at least to begin with, like it does have a bit of more aspirations than that. It does feel like it's aiming for a little higher than that. And I wouldn't say it reaches that. I'd say it ends up just being a fun B movie with a fun premise and some nice tense sequences that are fairly well shot. I think the cinematography mostly holds up throughout. There's a couple of moments where I thought the cold breath was like really obviously CG, which was a little and I get it. You don't want the actors to actually be freezing their asses off, in snow, or especially Megan Fox walking about barefoot. So it's like, if you're paying attention to it, you can tell that it's not real snow. But it's actually, for fake snow, it actually looked pretty. It looked and moved around pretty good compared to some other fake snow that I've seen in other things. So I won't complain. I get it. You don't want to give Megan Fox frostbite. I understand.
There was a great shot, speaking of cinematography, towards the beginning of the movie's overhead shot of when she taking the taxi, I think, to her husband's office, and you can see the overhead shot of the taxi and the umbrellas. It was really nice.
Well, what I liked about that is because it starts off with just some clouds and some credits and whatever, but it's like it's a drone or a helicopter shot of. And it starts off, and it's very distinct. It's New York, right? So you can see like the top part of Central Park, and it's winter, so it's all snow. But it does this thing where it sort of gradually becomes a bird's eye view, like you say, and then eventually you see the car and the umbrellas and stuff. But because it was so graceful, because we get so many aerial shots in New York now, right? So many movies have the skyline of New York, and it's just kind of whatever. This, I thought, it was just nice and graceful, and the way it kind of honed in a little bit made it feel like there was a bit more of a focus, and it made it just feel like a little bit more, like you say, eye-catching. So I agree, that opening shot was quite good. It was like, oh, this might be not bad. Was kind of my reaction. I was like, oh, okay, all right. You've started off with a nice shot. Okay, you've got my attention, movie. Don't ruin it now. Don't ruin it. So. Yes, I'm trying to think what else we can talk about in the spoiler free.
Yeah, the spoiler free part.
It's I don't know if there's anything left. Because this movie, because once things start to unfold, once she's handcuffed to the dead husband, there's so many things that pop up, but I feel like they're all spoilers because you don't have to use any of those to sell the movie. The movie premise is that you just, husband kills himself, handcuffed to his wife, and she has to then deal with all these problems. Like, that sells the movie. So I mean, I never saw a trailer. I don't know how much they showed in the trailer. This feels like the trailer might probably spoil too much.
That's why I didn't watch it.
Yeah, because now that I've seen the movie, I'm thinking of I feel like they definitely show stuff from the back half. There's no way they don't show some clips of various things that are going on in the back half of this movie. So yeah, I guess we'll have to just move out to spoilers then at this point. But yeah, it's a fun movie. I would recommend it. It's not perfect. I'm not saying that you're not going to have any nitpicks or complaints, but I think you can appreciate that it's a fairly competent movie. And I know that all sounds like a really faint praise, like I'm saying, no, these standards are so low now, but I don't mean it to be too faint. I mean it to be, no, there's nothing wrong with this just being a fun, solid, enough movie. And it's
everything is not just a binary, oh, it's awesome or it sucked. There's some things that are in between. There's a whole range between, something that sucks, something that's mediocre, something that's all right. There's a range.
Shasha, that's not what the internet's told me. The internet's told me everything's a 1 or a 10. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Also that certain things can give you cancer, apparently. I've read, someone wrote this film gave me cancer. I don't know if that's medically accurate, but I've seen it on the internet.
If it was directed by Rob Zombie, I believe it. So.
Oh, gosh. I have a whole rant video specifically about Halloween, too.
Kill her for mummy, Michael. Kill her for mummy. So. Yes. So spoilers. I got a spoiler warning for Till Death, Megan Fox's movie. Directed by S.K. Dale. I should probably mention director at some point. S.K. Dale's the director, who I'm not familiar with. S.K. He or she, I have no idea. Based on S.K. And there's no photo, annoyingly, so that doesn't help me. But I'm just having a quick look. Yeah, all short films. Apparently the name's Scott, so presumably a gentleman. Apparently it was 4 short films, and then this is the first feature. There's a feature-length debut. I'm actually honestly.
That's impressive for a feature-length debut.
That's promising. Some promising work in this. So that's pretty cool. So spoilers then. From this point on, you have been warned. All right. So it's in 3 sections. We can tackle the 3 sections. I think we mentioned a lot of the first one, but there's still some stuff to go over. Details wise, the key things, of course, being other things from the restaurant scene. He gives her this gift of the steel necklace because it's their steel anniversary. And she gives him Super Bowl tickets because she thought, oh, maybe your team, the Steelers, are going to be in there. And he's like, nah, they're doing shit. And he just puts the tickets down. It's like, I mean, obviously, given that he knows he's going to kill himself, maybe he's not that excited about the prospect of going to a game. But it was kind of this thing where because he has one of the things we didn't mention is he is very controlling. You know, he says, "Oh, I want you to wear the red dress. We'll go home and you can change before we go to the restaurant." Oh, to hell with your gift. Your gift's stupid. But put on my gift. I bought you that gift, and that's when he sort of forces the necklace on her. Blah blah blah. All these little things sort of seeding that. The other big thing though is that in his office, she looks at one of these case files, and it's this guy who she has like a quick flashback to. She was attacked. It sounds like this is maybe how they even met. Was that he was a prosecutor at the time and put this guy away. Although it sounds like the reason he got rich and he's in this big company now is because he switched to being a defense attorney for scumbags. That's where all the money is. So I don't think that's any sort of commentary. It's just kind of based on
just an explanation for his wealth.
It's an explanation, but it's also just another sign that he's kind of a shittier person than he used to be. Yeah. Over that decade, he seemingly slid into awfulness. So, but he's got one more surprise after all this stuff, where he insists that she wear a blindfold, and he's driving her out somewhere, and she keeps saying, oh, like, this is weird. Like, can I just take the blindfold off? And he's like, no. And at one point, he actually grabs her arm. He's like, no, you'll ruin the surprise. Like, but it's very intimidating. It's an intimidating thing. And all I can think, this is the thing when I'm thinking back on this scene, given where it goes and what he's going to do, I'm like, is there any reason she actually has to be blindfolded for this? I mean, maybe not to like text anyone where she's going or something. Maybe he's trying to eliminate the idea that she might like communicate with anyone before he's actually enacted his plan of, occupying her time, and then obviously when she wakes up, the phone's in the water and stuff. But I was like, does it actually matter if she's blindfolded the whole way in the car? It didn't seem like it did.
I don't think so.
Because she knows what this place is. Because she says this is their lake house. It's just they don't usually come here in the winter, so her knowledge of how to get home is not an issue here.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he had her blindfolded just so that she wouldn't argue with him. Because I assuming that she probably would have said, I don't feel like going out to the lake house if she knew immediately that she was going to the lake house.
Yeah, she might have said.
Not that it would have mattered because she changed her dress for him and she put on a necklace like he told her. So even if she did try to argue, most likely he was going to bulldoze her.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, though. You're saying that she like might have said, hey, nah, you know what? I don't feel like being in a secluded place with you. Yeah, he's kind of removing the chance for her to say no. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But they end up there. He's got rose petals around. He's got some candles. He's got some old photographs of them, in their earlier days. He leads her up to the bedroom, gives her some champagne or wine or whatever, and presumably they have sex, and it's the end of the night. It's not very romantic. All of it feels very cold and clinical. It feels like she's going through the motions. We know she has no love left for this relationship. And that's kind of the sad thing about those Super Bowl tickets in a weird way, is that it did kind of feel like she made an effort. Like she actually thought of something. Because when she handed him an envelope, I almost thought it was divorce papers. Like I thought, oh, she's just going to end this. That's why it's in an envelope. And No, she actually thought of something that might be appealing to him. So, obviously the idea that he not turns that down, so poo-poos it immediately is just a shitbag thing to do. But like, she actually did put in a little effort into that gift. Like, she was like in some way trying to go back to having a married life. But you can tell she's not into it.
Even the trying to leave her what do you call a person that you have an affair with?
Yeah, it's not mistress.
Yeah.
Mistress?
What's the male version of the mistress?
Mattress?
The mattress. Yeah, her even trying to leave him, I was like, that kind of showed that she was trying to maybe save her marriage. I don't know.
That's going to be bugging me. Is there a word for a male mistress?
Yeah.
Or is this one of these sexist things where there's no word for it because it's always the woman who's in the wrong? Is that like why there's no word for it? I don't know.
I'm giving this over to Generation Z. You guys come up with the word for us.
I'm not in that. I'm a millennial. I dare you.
I know. They've already declared you old.
Okay.
They say millennials are old and they have to worry about their Harry Potter houses and stuff like that.
That's right. Yes.
I'm handing it off to them.
These whippersnappers, how dare they?
Yeah, you guys make up words.
Yeah. But obviously, where the movie really gets going here, but I want to make this clear. This opening like 25 minutes, 30 minutes, because it's a 9-minute movie, so it's like about a third. It's honestly pretty solid as far as like being intriguing. It's not perfect. I think Megan Fox is a little wooden in her acting at times. Like, she has a little bit, and it kind of works for what the character's going through, but it's not always appropriate. Like, sometimes it feels like she could be given us a little bit more, but you know, it works well enough, and she feels trapped in this marriage. You know, it gets the point across. So she wakes up, and she's like, it's really cold, and she's like, you know, getting under the covers, and then she's like, wait a minute, I'm handcuffed, and she yanks on it. So what the hell is this? And then he just turns around and he says something. I can't even remember what he says. Something really ominous, just like. I can't remember. I don't know. But he doesn't acknowledge what she said. He just says something, you know, whatever his last line was going to be, and then he just immediately pulls up a gun and shoots himself in the head. And obviously she's freaking out. The body's there. There's like a chunk of his head just kind of open, and there's blood, and she's in her nightie, right? He's removed, presumably when she's been asleep, he's removed all of the other clothes that were in here, right? And it's a lake house, so it's not like they were stocked up with tons of clothes, because they're not living here typically. He's removed her phone. You know, when she eventually goes downstairs and drags the body down, she's put on his shirt to try and, because again, he's left the front door open so that the whole house would cool down in the winter. So it's freezing. The phone's in the vase of water, so that doesn't work. There's no utensils. There's nothing to even, because I mean, me being the horror movie guy, I'm like, just cut off his hand. Like, he's dead. What difference does it make now?
Yeah,
just cut off his hand.
I was thinking that too.
But he started that because there's nothing to do it with, right? You know, there's nothing. So this part of the movie becomes like her on her own, and it's like, oh, holy shit, okay, so is this going to be her just trying to figure out what has he not thought of? What is she going to discover or figure out that he's not thought? Because when she gets to the car, which is in a separate garage, you know, across the there's like a walkway, so she has to go in the snow. She actually gets the only thing that's in the closet that he's left there out of symbolism is her wedding dress. So she's actually ripped up parts of that and wrapped it around her feet so she can try and walk in the snow. Not very effective, I wouldn't imagine. But you know, she gets to the car and she's found the keys, which is, you know, she's like, okay, that's lucky. But he started this because he's emptied the car. He's emptied the tank. But the radio plays and he's left a message saying, "Oh, you've gotten this far." Do you know what? I'll be surprised. I'm honestly surprised that there wasn't more of this, like other like messages he left for her. Like, I was surprised this was the only one. Yeah, I don't know.
That's where I had to start to suspend my disbelief, because there's no way that a person this wealthy, with having the type of car that he have, that wouldn't have OnStar on it. A lot of these cars, you can literally hit one button and call for help.
That's a fair point.
And yeah, so I was like, so we're just gonna ignore that exists.
Joey's so funny. It never even occurred to me because I have literally never been in a car with that as an option.
I I've only been in a rental car with that. I still drive around an old beater car, but I know the existence
Yeah,
of
but
nicer cars.
he is filthy rich. I mean,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be fair though, he has planned all this meticulously. Could he have intentionally brought a car that he knew didn't have that? Like, that's something he could have
yeah. This is
chosen.
true. Yeah, he could
Yeah.
have done that or
So
disabled it. I'm sure there's a mechanism to disable it.
yeah, he just didn't pay the bill. He's like, no,
Yeah.
okay, it's not happening. So I think there's I never thought of it, but I think there is. You could explain it by him just given everything else he's thought of and everything else he's
Hmm.
set up to like not be there. You know, she goes down, but she drags his body all the way down to the basement, and the tools are all gone.
Hmm.
I actually, I don't know if it was with Connor or Tim, but I made fun of another movie once for having all the outlines on the wall of where the tools were. But it turns out that's actually a real thing, and this is now another example
Oh,
of it.
is it?
Yeah, this is
I
not.
I laughed at that too. It felt like something they would put in a Looney Tunes
No,
cartoon. Like I was like, why is there an outline of
no,
the saw?
I made fun of this, but I can't remember the explanation. But so, people commented saying, no, this is like a common thing with this type of workbench. It's something. I think it's just because it's not obvious where things go necessarily, so you just have it's like a safety or thing. I don't know. I can't remember. So I'm sure someone in the comments will say it again now that I've brought it up. But I sort of smelled them and oh, I know that's not bullshit now because I thought it was such a movie thing. Because it was teasing a saw or something like that, so they wanted to see the outline of the saw. But no, it turns out it's a real thing that happens. So
Like the orange juice in the clear carafe. I don't know anyone who pours their orange juice out of the carton into the clear carafe, or even if you are making a like freshly squeezed orange juice, the decanters that come with the juicers don't look anything like the pretty glass orange juice pitchers that they always have in movies.
yeah. Or the fact that when in movies, whenever they buy some groceries, there's always a baguette sticking out of the bag.
Yes. Yes, you're not done shopping until you get a baguette. Like,
And no one just buys lettuce and it's already shredded in the bag. It's always a full cabbage. It's always a full
mhm.
head of lettuce in the in the bag.
Or celery sticks sticking out of the top
Yes,
also.
yes. Movie tropes.
Mhm.
But and this is where she's getting frustrated and she's yelling, like the shock of him being dead, she's over, which is fine. Where I maybe had a problem with her acting a little bit in terms of, and it may not be her fault, it may be more the director or the script not like writing her to be more shocked. But very soon, a car is coming up, and it turns out to be Tom, her boyfriend. And she's hesitant to open the door at first, and he explains that he thinks she sent him a message, but it turns obviously it's the dead husband sent him some text or something. And he comes in, and immediately he starts because he's a lawyer too, so he's like, "Oh, well, this is going to look really suspicious." And you washed your face, and she's like, "Yeah, I had blood all over my face. I didn't want to have blood on my face, so I washed it off." So yeah, but that's evidence. So that looks suspicious. So he starts thinking about all this, and then sure enough, there's another car that pulls up, and it's like, okay. This criminal who attacked her in the past, who he said earlier on was being denied parole, he's probably set this up so that he'll come and kill her, right? And this is where it gets a bit hokey and a bit B-movie with the premise. And I'm like, okay, but I'm having fun, so I don't really mind. I'll go along for the ride. But this
With
is
some of the writing too, because they did that lazy thing where they have
mm,
one character say to the other one, "Well, so and such, little brother." I hate when they do that. Most of the time, if you write the dialogue a certain way, you'll be able to ascertain that two people are related or they're siblings.
yeah.
Siblings talk to each other a certain way. You
There's a
don't have to
scene.
pause to say, "You're my brother."
There's a scene later on where, and this is natural, where the older one, the one who's the guy who attacked her, who went to prison,
Mm-hmm.
he says, he's like, that bitch like sent me away and they took our dad's house. I'm like, that would have told us later, the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would have been
Yeah.
enough. That was fine. But yeah, you're right. There's this line where he's like, come on, little brother, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I think what's funny is I think because I grew up watching movies, there's almost part of me that just assumes like certain like parts of America speak like this, where they'll say like little brother and like yeah.
No, we
They don't.
we don't. They just put that in movies because they think the audience isn't smart enough to figure out that people are siblings.
Anyway, so the acting thing here that I was getting at is that so Tom gets killed. He tries to talk to the little brother, And the little brother clearly is not as criminal as the bigger brother, right? He's clearly not wanting to hurt anyone. He's kind of your typical tropey character he's with the bad guys, but he's a little bit more sympathetic, or he doesn't seem to actually want to murder anyone. And he's like kind of shocked when his brother just comes up and stabs him. But Tom gets stabbed and killed, and like Megan Fox, I felt like here there's a lot of times where she has a chance to react to like when it's happening and she's hiding around the corner, where I didn't feel like the trauma. Like, it's one thing for the husband she was like detached to already, who was intentionally trying to mess with her as well. So any sympathy she had for what he'd done was probably quickly gone because like he wanted to put her through hell in his death. But you know, Tom, who in the opening scene, like we get this like what's supposed to be more of a solid connection between them. It kind of felt like she wasn't really distraught enough.
Yeah, I can get when her husband passed away, I could get where she would feel relieved because she wanted to get away from him anyways. But when Tom died, there should have been a much stronger reaction. And I keep thinking in my head, Toni Collette would have killed this. Like, she's so good at this type of thing. But she's on another level. Like, she should have had an Oscar 3 times over. If she wasn't doing horror movies, she would have had an Oscar a long time ago.
I mean, it's a bit mean to be like, yeah, Toni Collette, just because, like, yeah, Megan Fox is all right in this, but if Toni Collette was in this movie, it would be an A+. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're right. It's a bit mean, but you're right.
Yeah.
Mechanically, though, what I like about this, though, is like, okay, so you're giving me a movie where they're out in the middle of nowhere, and we have two villains, one who's much more vicious than the other one, but we have two villains, and she's hiding from them. They don't know where she is. But she has to sneak around with a dead man's body attached to her. That's actually, like, because I often talk about mechanics in horror movies because I think that to make a fun horror movie, you boil it down to a mechanic. And you tell, because how many times we've seen the movie where the character's hiding from bad guys who are in a house or in a building and they're trying to sneak around without being seen. It's kind of the scaredy cat Die Hard, where instead of being an action hero and shooting people and being able to be the hero, they're having to just stay out of sight and try and hide because if they get caught, they're dead or whatever. And this is like, okay, this obstacle you've given her of having this, you know, I mean, he's not like a heavy guy by the looks of it, but you know, it doesn't matter. He's still a grown man. Like, to drag a grown man around is still difficult, regardless of who you are. Especially since it has to hurt your wrist. The way it's pulling on your wrist constantly with that handcuff, it has to be painful. And I was almost again a little disappointed that it's actually right after this she manages to get free of him because she hacks off his thumb. Because when she takes him out to the little boathouse, there's a rudder, which is just, it's metal enough and it's sharp enough that she's like, oh, I can, you know, get part of his hand off with this. And sure enough, she does. And there's some good sequences here where she's hiding in the boat under the tarp, and they're walking around on the outside, and they're talking, and she's freezing, like, you know, she's in like a white shirt and like trousers, and that's it. Like, she has nothing else on. She is freezing her ass off. And I'm like, but now it's just normal. Now it's a normal movie hiding from bad guys scene because it's not. Because I thought if she was because when this happens and she hides under there quickly. It's right after she's like hacked off his thumb, and the dead guy's hand's still kind of like up in the side of the boat. And I thought this would be so much more tense if she was still connected to him the entire time. Like if at any point if they tried to pull him away, it would reveal she was there. And I'm like, that would be really interesting. So it's a kind of a shame that she'd already gotten free by this point. Even though I do understand that mechanically you have to shake it up and give her that freedom at a certain point. And they do fun things with that. There's moments, you know, a few minutes later where she's like, you can see like the one guy's in the foreground, like walking away from the house, and she's sort of like sneaking from the garage into the basement in the background. And there's a lot of like playing with the you know, the chess pieces on the board as they're moving around each other. And I love that stuff. I always love that stuff. But this movie had a unique element, which is that she's handcuffed to a dead guy while she's having to do this. And I felt like they could have maybe done a little bit more with that.
Yeah, I think that's where she kind of shined the most, was the physicality. Her having to drag this body up and down stairs, into a car, out of a car, even in the boathouse. I thought they were going to catch her because even if you hide under a boat, if you're outside and it's really at temperature, no matter where you hide, they will see your breath.
Yeah.
So that was another little thing that I said, okay, I'm not thinking about the logistics of how this would really happen. But I thought she did a great job with her physical acting.
Yeah, even just little things like, and this wasn't an acting moment per se, but just like when she goes down to the basement and there's no tools there, and then she looks back up the stairs, realizing she's going to have to drag him all the way back up the stairs, and she's like, "You can do this." Like, oh, this is the most workout you've ever had. This is intense. As far as contrivances go with like the logistics of things happening, there's a moment where the younger guy is going back out because they realize the safe that's in the closet upstairs needs a thumbprint, and like, oh well, the dead guy's hand will do it, so he's going back out to get the corpse, and Megan Fox happens to be outside at this point because she's trying to because she's found like a canister of gasoline, and she's trying to take it to the car, and she's outside when the younger brother comes out. She's outside, and she just basically dives into the sort of indent of snow she's made by dragging the gas canister. And I'm like, I don't know if I buy that you would actually be hidden from just lying down in the snow like this. Like, the other guy has to be so like unaware and just like not paying attention to not notice her. And they show it like they try and like make it passable with the camera work to make it feel like, yeah, he wouldn't see her, but part of me is like, nah, I mean, peripheral vision's a thing. Like, yeah, I feel like you would notice.
In the snow, they didn't make it evident that the snow was that deep. Like you could do that, like in where I grew up, there were times we could get 3 feet of snow. If you're walking through 3 feet of snow, then all through the movie, the snow would have been up to their knees.
Yeah, it's just not
that
as slick
wasn't
as that.
the case. So even you dragging the canister, there isn't. How is there now all of a sudden 2 feet of snow from you dragging the canister when you're only walking on a few inches of snow? That's not how this works.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why like this last chunk of the movie where there's these characters chasing her around and looking for her, it's fun, and that's why I'm still kind of positive on the movie, because it is entertaining to still watch her do this, even if you don't quite buy the techniques she's using to like survive. But there's a lot of smart things where she has the car key, so she sets off the alarm when they're about to find her. It's just typical movie stuff, but it is fun, and that's why I'm like, no, it's still a fun B movie. Like, even if it doesn't quite live up to the tone that it sets at the start, I think because it is still just entertaining to watch the stuff play out. Like I say, though, I hinted at this at the start, though, and spoiler free, is that the biggest problem the movie probably has is that the guy who attacked her here and his little brother, I don't actually think they're that menacing, and in particular the one who's meant to be, which is the older brother. He kind of comes across as just like a guest star in a TV show, because one of the big complaints I normally have with these VOD movies is that they don't look like movies, and I actually think this movie does look like a movie. I'll give it credit. The cinematography makes it feel like a movie. So it's funny to me that my complaint with this bad guy is that he feels like a guest star on a TV. And I've seen the actor in other things before. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but he just doesn't have. He feels just like such a typical menace. Like, and it's not that he's not dangerous to her. He's walking about. He's got his big knife and whatever. But he feels just, I don't know. He's not like horror movie villain levels of like intimidating. He's more just kind of like, I don't know, criminal villain levels, if that makes sense.
I wrote in my notes that he reminds me of a villain from Tales from the Crypt, like an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Which one? Or just in general?
Oh no, just in general.
Just in general. Okay. Oh yeah, I can see what you're saying. He kind of feels like he's okay on like as a guest star in an episode of like, I don't know, pick crime show or pick murder mystery show.
Law and Order.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, definitely Law and Order guy.
And I don't actually think it's the performance. I think it is just the way he's written, where because I think it's because they're just there for the money in the safe. Like, see if it was about killing her, I think, I mean, he's happy to do that and he wants to do that too, but his main goal is to get the diamonds in the safe because he wants to be rich. And I think in a horror movie, that just makes your villain less interesting, because a villain in a horror movie should be more sinister, and that feels just kind of like he's too human. He's too normal.
Her husband was scarier than him.
Yeah,
her husband was scarier.
The husband pulling off all this and saying, like, I'm going to have her trapped, attached to me in a house that has no heating in the middle of nowhere. That is far more horror movie levels of sinister and far more, yeah. So he never lives up to the dead husband. I guess is the thing. I mean, if I'm going to like attempt to say that the movie's trying to do something with the script here, I would maybe say that, okay, since the husband effectively, quote unquote, saved her, a decade ago when she was attacked by being the lawyer who came in and put the bad guy away. The idea that she then, after his death, in order to completely sever her ties to this relationship, she has to also like fight that battle on her own as well to finally be free of the marriage, kind of thing, right? So it's not only just about getting rid of the husband, it's about also winning that battle on her own that he kind of won for her back in the day, which isn't really true because she stabbed him in the eye and like got away herself. He just put him in prison. But like I kind of get what the movie's doing with that. There's some action stuff at the end. The younger brother tries to like sort of like stop him. In fact, one of the things we should mention is the gun that the husband used to kill himself with. Megan Fox did the thing that I thought she should do immediately, was like try and use the gun to shoot the chain, because presumably that should break the chain, right? A bullet should do it, or at least a few bullets. But of course, he shot himself with one bullet in the gun, right? Everything else is empty. But it played up nicely because you knew it was lying there. So later on, when the younger brother picks up the gun and aims at his older brother, it's like, okay, we know it's empty, we know, but they don't know that. And the brothers end up fighting, especially when it turns out the husband didn't put the diamonds in the safe. The diamonds are in this steel necklace which can't come off. So, and it's just a hacksaw that's in the in the safe. So the older brother wants to just cut off her head. And the brothers fight.
Oh wait, he pauses. He pauses to say this brilliant line.
What was the line?
The line was something to the effect of, he doesn't want us to cut the necklace off her. He wants us to cut her off the necklace. I would have loved to see this in a movie theater just for the audience reaction. I think that would have got some chuckles.
I feel like the natural thing to say isn't why us to cut off the necklace. He wants us to cut her head off, would be the line that I would expect you to say in that scenario. Yeah. But he went with this weird, cheesy, roundabout movie way of saying it. No, that's true. So I'm actually going to give the movie points for something here. This is a really weird thing to give a movie points for. So basically the brothers are struggling, and because the little brother's behind the big brother, he gets knocked against the wall, and the back of his head goes onto like a little coat hanger, which kills him, right? And I thought it looked quite effective the way his eye kind of bloodied up as he was dying, but he's kind of hanging from this coat hanger because he's impaled, the back of his head's impaled on it. What I'm going to give it points for, it's a fun little death, but what I'm going to give it points for is that after about 15 seconds, his body weight becomes too much for the coat hanger, so the coat hanger falls out the wall, like it sort of snaps out of its joint, and I'm like, you know what? Most movies would just leave them there hanging because they think it's a cool visual, and this is actually the realistic thing, where of course a human's weight is too much for that coat hanger, and it's going to fall out. Because it's this little coat hanger that's connected by like one screw. Of course that screw is going to pull out a bit of the plaster and fall down. I don't know. I know it's a stupid little thing to be like, hey, have points, movie, but
I agree. I like that the body fell because I wasn't expecting it to.
Yeah, no, nor was I. But it's an okay little death, and of course, like the villain's just this typical like asshole who's like, "This is all your fault. You led to killing my brother. You put me in prison." I'm like, yeah, but you tried to kill her, or you attacked her, whatever you did. Like, but all of it's her fault. It's her fault for taking his life away. Sure, dirtbag, sure. But yes, she manages to like hit him in the head, and then she attaches the handcuff to him, so that now he's attached to the. And I should mention here that they re-handcuffed her to her dead husband when they caught her, but then the younger brother like used his lockpick because he's like a safe cracker, so he like, uses his lockpick skills to get rid of the handcuffs. She puts the handcuff on the bad guy here when he's knocked out for a moment. So now he has to chase her, and he's the one handcuffed to the dead body, which is a fun role reversal. I enjoyed that part of it. They get out into the ice. They're fighting, and eventually he's like stabbed the ice enough and stuff that the ice cracks and they fall into the water. She stabs him in the eye in the water, which is a fun little, sort of like ironic thing because she stabbed him in the eye when she was defending herself with her keys, and that's what we hear about the flashbacks. So,
wait, let me describe this.
Go on.
Because this part I really really like. When they're on the ice, she runs out to the ice, and when he's stabbing at her and he breaks the ice, he doesn't immediately fall into the water. The body falls in the water, and since it's handcuffed to him. He can't get away, and so as he's falling in the water, he grabs her by the necklace, which won't come off her. And it's a beautiful shot of them all descending underneath the water.
And a point on the necklace. is that we know that the bolt cutters couldn't cut through that necklace, so that necklace is not going to come off no matter what. We know that thing is going to drag her in.
And it's I think it's extra. I'm about to say funny. Okay, I'm make of that what you will, but I think that it's extra funny that when they're underwater and she's trying to get away with him, knowing that she stabbed his eye out the first time to get away with him, she stabs his other eye out under the water to get away from him, and she has to swim back up to the surface. But it's shot beautifully. I don't know, they probably had to get a tank and everything to do that, but it looks great.
I mean, even the ice on top, I'm sure was a stage, because it does look a little fake. In the distance, it looks like the distance is like a CG backdrop, which is fair enough. I get why you're not shooting on a real bed of ice, right? You're on like a stage and it's fake ice, and they're actually nice and cozy, warm, I assume. But now you're right. They do a lot here with the sort of the almost the chain reaction of like the body dragging him down and him grabbing her, and then the whole thing is kind of, again, it's a little over the top. It's very B movie, which is why it sort of is definitely in B movie territory by the third act. But it is fun. To give it credit, it's paced very well. It doesn't drag, which is a problem I have with a lot of these low budget VOD movies that end up. I find myself just like being terribly bored. This movie has a character who was trapped in a relationship they didn't want, with someone who's clearly very vindictive, and everything afterwards when she's in this predicament is very focused. It's very well paced in terms of the actions of her dealing with each obstacle and each person she's interacting with and try to like problem solve her way through things. But it's also, I mean, not a super great metaphor, but it's a pretty decent metaphor for, okay, there's this literal idea of her trying to break away from her dead husband, the ball and chain, as you put it, and ultimately dealing with this thing from her past, which is actually kind of tied to her husband, because her husband kind of fought this battle for her in a way back in the day. So now she has to, do it herself.
It's funny you said it's tied to her husband.
I didn't even mean that, but
I know.
I'll take points. I'll take pun points. I'm happy.
I think this would have been fun to watch in the theater because there's a lot of moments that I can almost hear the audience reaction. Do you have any like theaters near you where the audience is like particularly more raucous? Was raucous that the word I'm trying to say?
Raucous.
Yes. You ever know when you type something out, you know the correct word, but you've never said it aloud. You've only written it.
Yes.
It's one of those things. But do you have any theaters?
Oh, actually, raucous.
Like
I think raucous is what you're saying for us. It's not raucous. You said the soft C, so then I said the soft C, and I'm like, no, wait, it's raucous. Or rowdy. I think that's what you did. You mixed up.
Rowdy. Yes, that's a better word.
You mixed up rowdy and raucous. Anyway, no, this is the thing. The UK audiences in the theaters are very, very different from the US. Audiences in theaters in the UK do not clap at movies. They do not cheer. The only noise that anyone makes at a movie is laughter at a comedy, because jokes will make people laugh. But other than that, audiences are very quiet, unless she gets like shithead teenagers who won't shut up. But other than that, it's a very different experience. That's like seeing clips on YouTube of people watching Avengers Endgame in the US and like everyone cheering when like Captain America does something. I'm like, this is weird. What are you doing? It's a movie.
Oh, it's like if you would have loved seeing Freddy versus Jason in the movie theater. It was like going to a sports game, because you had like diehard Freddy fans and diehard Jason fans cheering at different points in the movie, like it was an actual competition.
Yeah, but no, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some groan-worthy lines or eye-rolling kind of little moments, but it's fun, it's well-paced, it kept my interest. You have the symbolic ending again with her like swimming back up after she stabbed him, and she has the knife still, and she can't find like the hole where she could, even though it felt like she swam just straight back up. But movies always do this, where they can't find their way out of the water when they're under ice.
Well, what happens is she was in a lake, so I get that. Yeah, it doesn't make sense in a lake. In a river, it makes sense, because in a river, if you go under the ice, the river is running, so the water pushes you. But she was in a lake, so
it was very still. It wasn't like she was. Yeah. But
so
you have the symbolic thing where she actually like just stabs up from underneath with the knife, so you eventually get the knife coming up, and it's a very simple. So she's breaking through. She's breaking through from her marriage. She's breaking through from this trauma. All the rest of it is, the metaphors are there, and we end with her lying in the ice. She did like get to Tom's phone, which we knew was in his car at one point, and she called 911. She got the phone taken off her immediately, but I mean, we assume that the police, because of this call, traced it and sent someone out. I don't know if that's like, I don't know, is that a thing? Like, if someone calls 911 and they get cut off immediately, that they'll actually take it seriously and look into it? Because I feel like it probably happens a lot. For
It's not universally
yeah,
like across the board because every state, like I call it the United, we should be called the United Countries of America because every state has their own
yeah,
little thing going on. Some states they do automatically follow up, other states they don't. Like for example, if it's New York City, they're not going there's just no time to follow up on every single one. But if you're in a small town, more than likely they're going to follow up on it.
they did. I mean, I don't know where they drove to. I don't know if they're still in New York State at this lake house. I have no idea. Uh,
Yeah, they could have gone to a lot of people in the city if they have a lake house, they have a lot of options. It could be
yeah,
north to upstate New York, north to Connecticut, or west to New Jersey.
yeah. So there's a lot of options that they could have driven to.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we know they were driving for at least an hour. I mean, admittedly, I don't
Mhm.
know what that translates to.
Yeah. Oh, you could drive for an hour and still be in New York easily.
You could be, but I mean, she says at least she says you told me that an hour ago, but the actual journey could have been 3 hours or something. I mean, we don't
Mm.
know. We have no idea how long the actual journey was, but um, regardless, I mean, it's a minor
Mhm.
nitpick if it is a nitpick at all, but we hear sirens at the end to know that she's not going to be left out here feasted, just so that we can have the happy
Mhm.
ending. So
Mhm.
no, it's fun. Like I think the opening is actually so stylized that it's almost a little disappointing in a way that the rest of the movie isn't as stylized, but it's well paced. It's
Mhm.
a nice, simple story. It has some fun moments, has some moments of suspense, it has moments where you can see, the two characters are like opposing sides and she's trying to hide from them or things like that. Or when
Mhm.
like one, the brother's coming up the stairs and the other one's coming down the stairs and she's in the middle and that's when she sets off the car alarm. Just like moments of that. They're very movie, but they're handled well enough. I think it's a decent, fun time that I would recommend. And eventually we're going to hit something that's shit, and I am going to go on an absolute tirade about why it's terrible. But we've not had that
Mhm.
yet on this show. Maybe it's just new show luck. This is beginner's luck because this is a new show. But uh, that's where we are. So, uh, anything else you would like to add?
Just that it when I watched this, it was available on Vudu and
Hmm?
Amazon for 6.99. I don't think it's worth 6.99. Wait for it to drop to 3.99
Sure.
or for it to go to one of the streaming service a different streaming service like Shudder or Netflix or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in that case, rate the movie then. Rate the movie out of 10.
Are we doing half points or no half
You
points?
can do 0.5. Yeah, you can do a 0.5.
Okay, so I'm gonna do 6.5 only because I did get a little bit bored towards the middle,
Sure.
and then it picked back up. I feel like they probably could have cut maybe 10 or 15 minutes out of this, or they could have maybe had the brothers having a conversation as they're driving up or something to change the pacing, I guess. I don't know how I'm just kicking out ideas of how they could have made the middle more interesting to me. Yeah,
Well,
I think it would have been nice to have two cutaways, like one cutaway of Tom driving and receiving the text message, and you're not maybe not sure whether he's going to show up or not, and then another cutaway of the two brothers. Maybe that might have made it a little less boring for me towards the middle.
yeah, I don't know. I think we're on different sides here. This because I think it's paced very well, and I think the middle where she's on her
Mhm.
own and it is just her and the body, and she's just going around trying to figure things out. To me, in many ways, that was the interesting part of the was the discovery of all that. But
Mhm.
um, I'm actually landing. I think is this the third episode in a row that we're having the same score? I think it is because
Yeah.
I'm also going with a 6.5. I don't want to quite go into the it's solid good territory that I
Mhm.
think a 7 represents. So I'm going to go 6.5, but I'm fairly I'm enthusiastic about it, and I'll happily take a 6.5
Mhm.
compared to a lot of other things. So
Mhm.
but I think it's worth watching if you like the sound of the premise. I think you'll probably have a fun time with it. Not be blown away, but have a fun time, and that's okay. So there you go. That's Till Death. So of course, let us know what you thought of the movie. if you've seen it in the comments. Like and subscribe. Liking and subscribing and dinging the bell for the notifications are very important on YouTube. There's a reason why every YouTuber tells you to do it. So please do. Helps keep the channel growing. And of course, you can do similar things if you listen to the audio version. On the Screams After Midnight audio feed, you can rate us 5 stars and give us a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. That is cool too, and we very much appreciate. And of course, you can support everything by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month. Support all the content and keep it all coming, and get some bonuses, including starting in August a bonus episode once a month of the Sacred Hockey Mask. So we'll have our first bonus episode up sometime in early August. So look forward to that. But yeah, I'll give. Actually, no, before I let you promote, while I'm still on Patreon, I'll thank our Patreon producers, and I'll give Shasha a chance to shill. Shasha Shills. That's the segment. I've named it. All right. So thank you to our Patreon producers: Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. That is all of our Patreon producers over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. All right, Sasha, take it away.
I always mess up when I start to show for myself because I'm great at advertising for other people, but I'm terrible at advertising for myself.
You don't have to have a script. Just say it. What do you want to mention this week? Just obviously mention your channel's name, but
as always, I'm on What I Just Watched. I also have a website, whatdidijustwatch.com. Stay tuned for new episodes of Coast to Coast Horror with Crystal and Shasha, where we talk about horror movies from sea to sight and sea, and sometimes abroad. And we have some great stuff coming up for you because we went on a few ghost hunting adventures and we recorded it. So we'll take a look at the footage and see what we can salvage from.
Salvage.
A lot happened. Like the ghosts were really messing with us. They said, "Oh, you want to record? We'll give you something to see." Also on Monday, I will be on Hood Podcast at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Is that what Monday's that? This
Monday coming.
This will be up before Monday. Okay, I was going to say like that might be irrelevant by the time this goes up, but it's not. It's not. You're right. So cool. So you got all that. As always, the link to Shasha's channel will be down in the description. So it's always down there in these episodes. You can always go and click on it for easy access. But yeah, that's pretty much the show. That has been the Sacred Hockey Mask, our horror movie podcast for contemporary films. And yes, so hopefully you enjoyed your time. As far as other stuff from MailFuzz TV goes, or MailFuzz Movies in this case, if you're on the MailFuzz Movies channel, check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment, what I do with Tara. That is the sci-fi movie podcast. And movie news came back this week as well. I talked to Connor about some ongoing stuff in the movie world, and that should hopefully be a weekly thing now again as well. So go and check out all that stuff. But otherwise, that is us. That has been the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. And I'm still, tweaking this outro a little bit, but let's see if I nail it this time. If you see someone wearing the sacred mask, repeat to yourself, "Hockey season ended months ago."